let's listen to Dave. We'll wrap it out. We'll wrap up the day with some Dave. A lot of it is boring. I'm not going to lie. A lot of it is like regurgitated bullshit. But he does address, I'll give you my thoughts. He does address Toilet-gate. Or sorry, he does address, pancake-gate. But he doesn't go into detail. He doesn't let anyone know who is unaware of what it is, and what he did, which is, sort of a cop-out, I think. And he also still is very heavy into self-help and, Jack Canfield said this, and my community is get fit, and, that's where I'm spending my time, and I'm a work in progress. And it just so happens that he's coming out with this now when he has a book forthcoming, so I'm sort of less than impressed, but here we are. We can start over, and then
if dog people made dog food, it definitely.
Oh yeah, he's got some mixed in ads, just like Rachel does, where it's like half of it is him reading, and half of them is like pre-recorded ads. So
try to
sitting over
portion meals tailored to your dog's needs. Tell us about your dog.
Yeah, get ready for word salad for sure. It's coming.
Your plan and get 50% off at thefarmersdog.com/podcast. That's thefarmersdog.com/podcast.
Hello, Rise Together listeners. Dave here, sitting overlooking the back patio, here for a solo episode.
Oh, what? It happened during rehab? Dang. Talking about Dave. Oh, he's healing himself from drinking, going to a casino. Interesting. Now, that's just alleged. I don't know. I'm not saying that's what happened. That's interesting. We'll revisit this on a time where I can look at the details. Thank you, Mai.
It's been a while since I have done a solo podcast, and I'll tell you, it's in part because I'm still so much in the work of trying to dig into and understand why I do what I do, trying to kind of keep the learning that started almost a year ago continuing. And in some ways, it's me trying to find a little deeper sense of peace with myself. In some ways, it's my attempts to build a bit more confidence in myself. To be totally honest, as much as I really do love doing this podcast and the people I get to talk to, the last year has done a bit of a job on my willingness to share anything that might position me as a teacher, since I feel in so many ways that I am a student now more than ever, more than maybe any other time in my life. So think of this episode, think of me as your old pal Dave, not so much trying to teach you anything, but more that maybe by
not trying to teach you anything, by having a podcast in which I share things with you and don't want to be accused of knowing anything. But there we go. This is me. I am Dave at the Patio Piece, delivering things to you.
Sharing a little bit of my journey of this last year that maybe something will spark in you to do a little digging of your own, in the hopes that that inner work will be the teacher in your own life. Welcome. Have your compassion. A year ago, it's the anniversary of the beginning of a lot of tumultuousness, a lot of learning, a lot of growth, a lot of beauty, a lot of darkness. Like, so many things in my life have happened in this last year. But about a year ago, we were a month away from the release of my second book. It was called Built Through Courage. I, at the time, was unbelievably proud of the work. I am still really, really so proud of the work. But at the time,
the work sucked. I'm sorry. The work sucked. He's proud of it. I'm glad that he's proud of it. But it was just him telling about all the famous people he's had contact with and saying that he's great, and that ocean metaphor, sea ocean metaphor, boat metaphor. I have a tattoo. Here's a picture of my friend that I no longer talk to. Here's a picture of Heidi. That was the book. It's not life-changing by any stretch of the imagination to anyone. Not even to Dave, except life-changing in a negative way to Dave, I would say.
September of 2021, I'm gearing up for the old launch. And as much as I believe it was going to be a great resource for people then, still believe it's a great resource for people now, I also, if I'm being super honest, and I think some of the honesty is hopefully part of what comes out of the work that I am in the midst of, will continue to be in the midst of for some time. I knew something that I wouldn't necessarily say out loud then, even if it was just on an unconscious level. And that is that I was still really struggling in the aftermath of divorce, as much as at that point in time, what am I, like a year and 3 months into divorce?
Inside of divorce?
There was something in my mind, like this idea that like nobody wants to go to a sick doctor. Nobody would necessarily want to read a resource that was created by somebody if he were to confess that he was still struggling as much as he was. And that might have been a limiting belief. That might have been a thing I should have listened to, right?
A limiting belief. Like, why are you writing a self-help book in the first place? That's what everyone's question was. Why are you doing this? I mean, if you're contractually obligated, I guess I understand, but like maybe just write it from a place of like honesty. But he's like, everyone, same thing that Rachel said, everyone wanted me to be perfect, so I did what they asked me. Everyone wanted me to give them advice, so I just did what they were asking. It's like, take some responsibility, please.
Like, I am comfortable to suggest that, man, maybe the work would have been better or better received, or work that I was even able to take the advice of if I'd have spent a little bit more time doing work in healing, in grief, in, turning around and facing some of the stuff that I found myself running from, if I would have released the book 2 years from now or 5 years from now. But I couldn't see what I couldn't see at the time. I was blinded in some ways by, call it ego, blinded in some ways by this belief that if I could work hard enough or produce enough or achieve something, that it would in some ways reverse some of the feelings that I was experiencing in the aftermath of that divorce, and the way that rejection was a part of the experience that I'd gone through. And so I pushed forward. I did what I thought I needed to do, that if I could work hard, put on a happy face, be encouraging, be motivational, if I could help some other people, that it wouldn't matter necessarily if you didn't have the full picture of my experience, because...
But we got the full picture via Heidi's Instagram, so blame her.
I was still doing good work. I was still trying to help people.
How?
I believe today, I still think there are things.
Why didn't, the thing with Dave is like, or any of these people, it's like, if you really care and you're not in the place to be helpful, why don't you go take a class? Why don't you go take a course? Why don't you go enroll yourself in school and, learn something that doesn't have to do with your own lived experience, because that's all they have to offer. But it's not all that you could offer. You could go back and do something to help people, but you're choosing not to, which is sort of like, oh, people who are so pathetic that would listen to me can benefit no matter what's going on in my life, because, I'm better than them. Even on their best day, my worst day, I'm still better than them. Like, that's how it reads to me. Kimberly Casse, thank you so much. She says, I think it's funny how him and Rachel are sort of attacking each other in their podcast interviews, etc. They both drop snarks. Yeah, I know. Rachel's worse, I think, than Dave about it. Rachel seems to be more cutthroat about it. But,
This situation is a red flag.
It is a red flag.
This person is not okay.
That's Rachel talking about Dave. But not...
My boyfriend.
He's perfect. I agree, Kimberly. Thank you. Okay, back to Dave.
Book that if you read it and implement it in your life, that you could have something of a breakthrough in your life.
If I could implement being Dave Hollis in my life, yeah, I would probably have a lot more money. But there's nothing that he said there that is relevant to me, because all of it was about his own life. And like the map didn't even make sense, and he didn't put much time and effort into it. Like he says he bled into it, but in reality, it was like a poorly slopped together train wreck, in my opinion, and filled with stories that were irrelevant to anyone but his own ego.
But it feels in some ways like I am being forced to learn some lessons over and over again. I feel, and maybe it's just me, but I feel in some ways like my life has had a few things that I have had to learn, continue to present the opportunity to learn them until I actually learn them, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but I've had to learn over and over again that the full picture matters. I've had
When
to
you're
learn
a life coach, yeah, it does.
these lessons around integrity.
Because that's all you offer is the full picture. Who you are and how it worked. Yeah, that's important to people who are taking your advice.
Where you're trying to make sure that what you're presenting is also a reflection of what exists. And in that season of time, I don't know that I was doing a very good job of fully presenting the full truth of my experience. And of course, I'm being retaught these lessons because integrity matters, right? That not owning all of our human experience or only showing the good.
And I think integrity matters, but he only has integrity to himself. He doesn't have integrity to other people, because even at the end he's going to talk about, he's like, oh, so to further explain my integrity, I work out every morning because I told myself I work out. So now he's like, that's his integrity. But like, how about the integrity of showing up as who you truly are all the time? Not so much. That's not the integrity he's talking about, and he'll further explain that later, which is sort of disappointing.
It throws us out of alignment, and that hope for sustaining it is an impossibility. Or at least for me, it wasn't a matter of if I would fall, if I would stumble. It was a question of when, right? It was a question of when. The burden of trying.
And he's been talking about this shit for years, by the way. This is not the first time he's like said, I can rip people off. That's no problem, but I would know that that's wrong. And that's not what I want to do, because I value my own life, integrity. I can rip people off because I'm really good at it. And he literally like says that. He's like, I can sell anything because I'm really good at it, but I wouldn't want to do that for my own like self. Like I would want to be better than that. And I'm like, okay, Dave, yeah, you can sell anything. Sell built through courage.
To run fast enough, outrun that grief or pain or fear of being found out, or the rejection that sat in the aftermath of divorce. Like all of that running, for me, it wasn't a question of if, it was when. And as it turned out, the pressure around the release of the book was going to be the time when all of it, for me, would kind of come falling down. And so many of the things.
His accent is like smug. Just smug accent. I don't know. It's weird.
That I've had to learn in this last year end up coming back to a conversation around integrity, because it's a thing that I have not fully learned in my lifetime, because it's the root of so much of the dissatisfaction, the absence of self-love, the voice of my critic, the shame that I carry. So many. Okay,
wait, take a second break. This is hilarious, right? Look at this. Okay, I was looking for the part where he says that line, "You're always in control. Take back control." That's not very integrity focused, those two titles right there. Okay, sorry, going back.
Things end up coming back to parts of my life being out of integrity with who I am. And so I don't know if you've ever experienced that feeling of being forced to learn something until it actually sticks, or being forced to learn something over and over again. But man, this conversation around integrity, it just keeps coming around again and again and again. And I think for me, while I'm closer to understanding it, I'm braced. I'm bracing myself, because I'm in the midst of trying to unlearn a lifetime of relationship attachment, of whether it's in codependence or in ego and the way that it has been served, or fear and the way that it has catalyzed my behavior, or whatever it ends up being. I have just a lifetime of stuff that I am trying to unlearn in this attempt to be true to myself, right? In having my actions and my truth aligned, the essence of who I am and the version of who I present looking exactly the same. And yeah, of course, it also comes down to like making promises to yourself and keeping them, right? Like that is the vehicle for respecting yourself and loving yourself and having dignity. Having
dignity, that to me is not my definition of integrity. All these coaches seem to think like sticking to your goals is like, okay, if I say I'm going to work out in the morning and then I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I'm tired, I'm going to sleep 20 more minutes. Somehow that's not being in integrity. It's like, is that all that it is? Or is it like being a good person and, you know, when a moral situation comes up, like you choose the honest way forward? That's my thought of integrity, not like every self-help coach I've ever interacted with or been with has said the same thing. Like I was at this very scammy self-help conference that I was working, and they would say, okay, you know, have integrity. You have to be in your seat at 5:05. You know, be in integrity, align with integrity, and it was just so that they could sell you shit. That they could, you know, all the speakers were up there selling crap that no one needed, and so they wanted to guarantee that there was going to be butts in seats. So they're like, you know, basically shaming you into like, don't be that type of person who doesn't have integrity. It won't come back in the room on time. It's like, come on, man. Whatever.
Actually, keep your word to yourself. But it's also being okay with showing all of who you are, even the messy intricacies of what makes you human, to the world, to people on social, in your interpersonal relationships.
To the world, to people, to social media.
On an everyday basis.
Okay.
Because, and again, my experience. Denying any part of my experience, right? Curating some version of everything's great, this is awesome, or saying I'm going to do something but then not doing it, or whatever it is, right? Denying any part of my experience teaches me that the whole of me is not okay, right? Like if there's some part of me that I'm unwilling to bring into a room on some level, again, even if it's subconscious, I'm sending a message to myself that I'm not whole, that I'm not good, that if I were to expose this part of who I am, that I won't be loved. And
the weird thing is, if he would have listened to the haters on Reddit, like everyone was like rooting for him and saying like, you know, hey, just be yourself. No one wants you to be this like perfect guy that's got this hot blonde girlfriend that's, you know, perfect too, and that you have all the blended children and it's amazing. Like everyone was like, just chill out. Like people, you know, like you. It doesn't have to be. And he was the one who was like, no, I must curate this perfect image. And that just comes from a place, in my opinion, of like insecurity and unhealing, not being, you know, I hate the word healing, but like not being at a place of security with yourself. And so it still doesn't sound like he's at that level. Like his solution for all of this word salad talk is to join a fitness competition where he has to get on stage like lubed up and muscly. It's like, oh yeah, okay, so that's really, you know, I look at a man on stage and with muscles and I'm like, he must have integrity. It's like, no. As soon as you know, put weight back on or aren't doing a competition, you're gonna feel your feelings again. It's like, this doesn't seem like you're really whole yet.
I, like anybody else, I have a desire more than almost anything in the world to be myself and be loved for who I am. And
very true. And I think that's where it comes to, like, you're selling yourself as the guru. It's impossible not to, you know, I don't know, showing all of your kids, like showing your girlfriend, showing your trips, you're sharing all of that, but then you're also hiding it. That's the part where it gets confusing, because it's like, well, that is your brand. That this is the whole thing. There's no product other than watch my stuff and listen to me talk about myself. So that's where it starts to get like gray area.
What's crazy is like that desire, that kind of innate thing that lives deeply inside of so many of us, it can make us do some crazy shit. Like it can make us do things that just don't make sense. It can make us do things that we end up having shame for, regret for, or in some ways are disconnected from, again, the truth of who we are because we're so worried.
Okay, this part was like, I'm like, he's not going to say what it is. He's just going to allude to it. So if you know kind of feeling, but it goes so vague that I don't know what the fuck he's actually talking about. Like if I didn't know all the great detail of his life that he shared, I wouldn't know what he's referencing at all.
About pleasing ego. We're so worried about being inside of an in-group, like belonging. We're so worried of rejection, which again are all very normal human emotions, but satisfying not feeling rejected, or satisfying being in the in-group, or satisfying having them like you because you've kind of molded yourself into who you'd hope they might like. All of that ends up coming at the expense of you liking yourself because you are denying part of who you are.
Why is it you? Isn't this about you?
And it's part of why I think I just keep learning this lesson, man. I am on a mission to love myself and respect myself and to have dignity in knowing that I did what I said I was going to do, that my actions are aligned with who I am presenting myself to be, and that if there are parts of me that are not yet totally whole, that there is space to honor those parts, to bring them into a room, to have them be part of a conversation, and that even if there are people that could make fun of those parts or not like those parts, having them there and honoring that they are part of who you are and your human experience.
Like, what parts? This is so heady. I don't understand. It's so aloof. It's so like the parts of you that are in there to and further father go. It's like, the fuck are you saying?
More important than pretending like they don't exist and then hating yourself in the dark because of your unwillingness to acknowledge that that's part of who you are. At least that's been my experience.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Different actor.
He's like, and I use Canva. This guy has never used fucking Canva in his life. That's not very being in line with integrity. You've never used Canva, Dave Hollis. Come on, give me a break. He's like, I use it every day.
With a single click, I can remove background.
Yeah, he's
country
making
and device used.
He's making graphics on Canva.
For
give
a
me a
free
break.
45-day we're doing. We were really, really fortunate to have Jack Canfield come in and join a Zoom for some of the crew. And he is the greatest. He wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, if you're not familiar. And he talked...
Jack Canfield put together a bunch of short stories into a book and was really smart about it. He didn't write the books.
So many great things. There were so many little...
And I've met Jack Canfield at the same scammy conference that I was just referencing. I have a picture somewhere. I'll find it.
Nuggets of wisdom. But one of the things that I loved the most was this little clip that I ended up recording in the comfort of this very chair where I am recording this now. I sent it over to Heidi. She put it up on her social. Give a listen to Mr. Jack Canfield.
So what I'm saying is that sometimes what you get is what you need, not necessarily what you want for your own evolution and growth. And you have to learn to trust. My assumption, based on years of work, is that the universe is always working in my behalf. What my first mentor taught me was to be an inverse paranoid. Your paranoids think the world's out to get them. An inverse paranoid thinks the world out to benefit you. So it's a beneficent universe. Einstein said that. You have to decide one way or the other, and things is the quality of your life. So for me, if I believe the world is always in my favor, everything that shows up, I get to go, okay, what's the lesson here?
Cancel
what
me.
Quality am I supposed to develop? What am I supposed to learn, etc.
So
there I am.
Yes, that's genius. I want to break it down because for me, it was like one of these mind-exploding kind of moments where so many good things are in a single sentence, but against the backdrop of this conversation where I'm trying to understand why things have happened the way that they've happened in the last year, in many ways not making sense at the time that they were happening, only revealing after the fact that, of course...
I don't stand by this anymore. I just need to be honest about myself. I can't lie to you. I have integrity, okay? I need to share myself.
They had to happen in a certain way for me to learn the things that I was meant to learn, and this thing that I'm having to be retaught over and over again around the conversation of integrity and being true to myself, being such an important part of where peace and self-love and respect and everything else for myself ends up coming from. I thought it was just such a beautiful way of the universe wink and a little God wink kind of a moment for Jack to affirm some of what I had been feeling just a couple weeks ago when he was in the group having that conversation. So that first thing that he said was, sometimes you get what you need, not necessarily what you want for your own evolution and growth. You have to learn to trust.
What you want.
Like in the book, in my Built Through Courage book, I referenced Unanswered Prayers by old Garth Brooks. It's this interesting thing where I think we believe in this idea of praying and forget sometimes that we don't get a say in how the prayers get answered. And sometimes when it feels like we are going through something that is unexplainable, have a hard time believing that the things that are happening could in fact have anything to do with the answering of a prayer. And yet.
Oh my God. I should Photoshop Rachel's body on that. Everyone will go insane.
This isn't Burger King. You know, like I get frustrated that my prayers don't get answered my way. It's something that just, again, time ends up being such an important component in this for you to actually see how what was happening may in fact be happening in a way that can benefit you, or a thing that you
Good
need.
morning.
As you say, you get what you need, not necessarily what you want. You know, I do wish that you got to detail how you got what you need. I wish that you could, you know, ask God specifically for an itemized chronological list of how you'd like things to happen. It'd be better for our comfort or our patience or our preference, but it usually doesn't work out that way. And trust, of course, is a thing that you have to learn.
Thank you, Aaron. I think we did this before and I did not do it correctly either. Sorry. That photo is gold inside of integrity. Thank you very much. You know, I got a picture of Dr. Oz as well from like 10 years ago. So I gotta pull that up as well to out myself, expose myself immediately.
You're not freaking fine.
You're not freaking fine, Aaron. You're not freaking fine, okay? It's fine.
Mic drop, homie.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But dang it if it isn't hard. I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say that, man, my faith has really been complicated in the last couple of years, where I found times where I was very angry with God, where I did not get what was going on. I could not make sense of why this was happening or why that was happening.
Why? As a white man in America with wealth, why is God not blessing me every minute of the day? God, why?
I've also, by the way...
Why are you picking on me? I'm so nice. I'm trying to help rich people.
Like many people have, come to appreciate that God is absolutely big enough and capable enough to handle my anger. Thank you very much. But it has, of course, like many people. It's been hard to make sense of why things happen the way that they do or when they do. Why is this happening now? But in some ways, that's the definition of faith, right? Like just trusting that it's happening the way that it's supposed to for you to grow. It's trusting that it's happening the way that it's supposed to for you to become this better version of yourself, or this more evolved version of yourself, or a more aligned, in my instance with this conversation around integrity version of myself. Right? Like there's so many things that I can see now had to happen to bring me back to me.
Boring.
Because in some ways I veered away from an authentic representation of who I am. I veered away from who I'd hoped to be. And in the dissonance that existed, I'd created a breach in integrity. And I couldn't love myself there. I couldn't respect myself there. I couldn't feel the kind of peace that you might feel when you find yourself aligned, right? So I appreciate things now that I couldn't appreciate then. If you're in the midst of something right now, time is going to be the equalizer. Time reveals all things. Time will show you some of why what you're going through right now is the thing that you're having to go through. It sucks in the moment. There's some stuff happening in my life right now that sucks in the moment.
Tell us what it is. Tell us what it is, or else I will literally fall asleep.
They truly have it all.
Dave, what do you want to convince us about you and Rachel?
They truly have it all.
Okay, let's take a pause for a second because I am literally going to fall asleep.
The second big thing he said, and this is a big one, is just this idea that the universe is always working on my behalf. Being inverse paranoid. I'd never heard this term in my life. I'm now in love with this term. It's difficult for me, by the way, as a pragmatic, practical person who, I'm going to argue, as much as I hate to have to even admit this, I lean towards pessimism more than optimism, even though I know I need to reach for something better, even though...
Why? Choose sadness. Dave is changing teams and he will be choosing sadness, but not yet, not until he becomes self-aware. But he is laying the groundwork.
Like to believe that something good can happen. I am observant of all that could go wrong, have been my entire life. Be an inverse paranoid. A paranoid thinks the world is out to get them. An inverse paranoid believes the world is out to benefit them. This decision determines the quality of your life. This decision. I'll tell you what, when you're going through hard things, you want to punch a person who says these words in the face. Violence is never the answer. I'm not an advocate of it, but as a person who's had to, like, in the midst of being forced to my knees, going through some shit that nobody, I certainly didn't ever hope to have to go through, it's really, really difficult. It's really difficult to just say, hey, you know what? Decide that this is going to end up working out for you. And I think that there's a time, I will actually argue against this just a little bit. I think there's actually a time when it's okay to just be pissed off. I think that there's a time when it's okay to just be angry or be really sad or be real.
Isn't he like on our team with this narrative, but then he like backtracks it immediately?
Unsure of what the heck is going on. And then I think that time expires. I think that there's a time for anger and a place for frustration, and definitely you have to create a lot of space for grief. But at a certain point, I think that there is this invitation to choose, all right, I'm not going to stay here forever. I'm not going to stay here for the rest of my life. This sucks, and I don't think it's fair, and I wish it wasn't happening. And also, it's time to believe that it's for a greater good. And I'm going to take a step out of this and another step. And in a Robert Frost kind of way, the only way out is through, right? Another Robert Frost thing.
Damn.
Two Robert
Kimberly.
Frost quotes back to back, Dave. Come on.
Kimberly.
The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I got promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep, right? Like, there may be miles in front of you. The woods might be dark, but the only way out is through. You got to take a step. And then another step. And part of the willingness or the ability to take a step, it requires that you have some hope. It requires that you believe that something good can come out of it. And so I'm going to, give some credit to this idea from Jack that the universe having your back being a choice is a thing that if you can choose it may in fact be one of the only things that you can reach for when you're starting your journey out of stock. Right? I mean, I'm sure people have heard Tony Robbins' idea that, you
Okay, this is the only funny part, and then we can stop.
question, how is this happening for? A choice is a thing that if you can choose it may in fact be one of the only things that you can reach for when you're starting your journey out of stock. Right? I mean, I'm sure people have heard Tony Robbins' idea that, you ask the question, how is this happening for you and not to you? Again, when you're going through something effing miserable, you want to tell Tony to shove it up Tony's ass. But how is this happening for you and not to you?
Okay, that's it. That's all I got the strength for. I'll include the tarot photo on here. Hold on. Tarot she's still in her spot, leaning and breathing. She's so cute, isn't she? She's the best. She can go right there.